Alright, so we're going to do some quick talking about going from standard form to slope-intercept form and why the heck it's important. This is a very important skill that you will use in Algebra 2, etc. And I do know it's on the ACT. Okay, so first off, standard form, the generic formula is ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are just numbers. Okay, so for example, 3x plus 4y equals 12. So that is the equation of a line in standard form. You're most common or familiar with this form y equals mx plus b, which is slope-intercept form where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. Okay, that is probably the easiest way to graph a line and the one that you're most familiar with. And so how to go from standard form to slope-intercept form, you basically need to solve for y. So we're throwing it back to Module 1, solving for literal equations. I want you to rearrange this to get y by itself, okay? Now, why is that important? One, it's a lot easier to graph a line of y equals mx plus b. Second thing, you cannot find the slope from looking at this. You can find the x-intercept, you can find the y-intercept, and you can graph it, but if a question said, hey, what's the slope? It's given to you then in this form, you cannot find it without doing some work. So it's important if you want to find the slope, and it's important if you want to graph a line of y equals mx plus b. So first off, you're going to solve for y. So I want to get y by itself on all these because in this form over here, slope-intercept form, you need y by itself on the left side. So first off, you're always going to subtract or add your x's first. So in this problem, I would subtract 2x from both sides. That would cancel out. I would be left with a positive y and an equal sign. And I cannot combine this 2 and this negative 2x because they both don't have the same variable. And so I'm going to rewrite it. And I'm going to be strategic in the way that I rewrite it, in the fact that I want my x term to come first and my y-intercept to come last. So strategically, I should write negative 2x and plus 2. Could you have it another way? Yes, but typically this will be your slope, y-intercept. That's the most common form for our slope-intercept. Okay, and so that would be your answer for the first one. So I've solved for y, I've gotten y by itself, I've gone from standard form to slope-intercept form. Okay, now that was an easy one because they were all pretty much positive. It gets harder when there are negative numbers just because you can make more mistakes. So on this one over here, the opposite of a 6x is the negative 6x. So I would do that to both sides. Cross out my 6's. Now I'm left with a negative y. Don't forget the negative sign. I'm going to rewrite this over here. I'm going to write the slope first and then my y-intercept second because I can't combine them. And then y is still not by itself because there is an invisible 1 there. So I'm going to divide by negative 1. Now, this is what you used to do with literal equations. You put a big division sign 1, which is fine. I'm going to show you a different way to kind of help you out. So that's the same as dividing everything over there by a negative 1. Okay? And then I would have y equals, and now I have a slope and I have a y-intercept that I can simplify. And so negative 6 divided by negative 1 is a positive 6x. And then a negative 1 divided by negative 1 is a positive 1. Okay? So if you divide all the sides on the right side, that's going to help you get a slope and a y-intercept versus a huge fraction line, okay? All right, I'm going to try one more, which is going to involve a fraction, and then I'm going to leave you guys to try some. So again, first off, I need to get my x to the right-hand side by doing the opposite. So I'm going to subtract x on the left, subtract x on the right. I am left with a negative 3y, an equal sign. I'm going to write my slope first, negative x, and then plus 6. Okay, so now I need to get y by itself still, so I need to get rid of that negative 3 by doing the opposite operation and divide by negative 3 on all of my sides. So y is by itself, which is what I want in slope-intercept form. Now here's where it gets tricky, because there was no number with that x. But we can always put a 1 with it. And so you've got negative 1 divided by 3, which is going to be a positive 1/3. Okay? If you type that in the calculator, you get a decimal, and make sure you would always put as a fraction because slope is a relationship between rise over run. And so we need a fraction for that. Lastly, you would do 6 divided by -3 and get subtract 2 or -2. Okay? So this is an example when you would get a fraction. And so make sure you simplify your fraction, etc. 2 negatives divided by negative will get you a positive. Okay? So if you can think of a shortcut into not showing all this work, that's fantastic. But if you can't, make sure you can show your work. One of the shortcuts I can think of is if I am moving the x over here, all that's happening is it's changing its sign. And so if you want to skip this step of subtracting it and just moving it to the other side and changing its sign, go for it. But if you want to show your work, that is fine too. So I want you to try these two problems. I want you to change them to slope-intercept form so we can find our slope. So press pause and try those on your own. The answers you should have gotten. For the first one, I showed my entire workout, and I got -4y equals -x minus 8. I divided by -4 on each of my problems, and then I got +1/4 x and then a +2. On the second one, I kind of showed you a little bit of a shortcut. I went ahead and moved this 2x over to the left side and changed its sign and got -2x. Brought everything down. I then divided by -5, and I did it to the whole thing. And so if you want to split up this fraction, here's one piece. So -2 divided by -5 is a +2/5 x. And then your second piece would be a -5 divided by a -5, which was a +1. So again, 2 ways of doing the problem. Pick which way you like best. But that is how you go from standard form to slope-intercept form. Okay, which is important for finding slope. All right, thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any questions.